If you've ever lain awake at night doing math in your head that never quite adds up, no matter how many times you run the numbers, this story is for you. There's a particular kind of fear that has nothing to do with the number in your account and everything to do with a feeling that never leaves, no matter how large that number grows. You know the feeling. You felt it checking your phone in a parking lot, in the middle of a meeting, at 3 a.m. for no reason at all. You tell yourself it will pass once things settle down. It doesn't pass. It just changes clothes. Today, I want to tell you about a merchant who built one of the largest fortunes on the eastern trade roads, and about the 7 words that undid everything he believed about money. Those 7 words came from his own mouth, not from the monk who asked the question, but we'll get there. First, you need to understand who this man was and why his story is, in more ways than you'd like to admit, your story too. Before we go further, tell me in the comments, what's the one money worry that follows you everywhere? The one that shows up even on good days? You might be surprised how many people carry the exact same weight, quietly, without ever saying it out loud. His name was Devarim, and in the river town where he lived, people did not say his name without lowering their voices a little, the way you speak about weather that might turn violent. He had started with nothing, a single mule, a length of rope, and a debt to his uncle that took him 9 years to repay. Counted out coin by coin on the same wooden table every month, without fail, without complaint, because complaint felt like a luxury he hadn't earned yet. By the time he was 40, he owned 3 warehouses, a fleet of barges, and enough silver that the moneylenders in town bowed to him instead of the other way around. The town sat where 2 rivers met, and in the evenings the light came off the water in a way that made even poor men stop and look, made fishermen rest their oars just to watch it, made children stand at the edge of the quay pointing at the color as if it might vanish if they blinked. Devarim never stopped to look. He walked fast, always fast, his sandals slapping the stone quay, a ledger tucked under one arm like a second heart, its leather cover worn smooth from his thumb running along the edge whenever he was thinking, which was always. His warehouse smelled of raw cotton and turmeric and the particular sourness of rice sacks left too long in humidity. And he knew that smell the way other men knew their children's faces, because he spent more hours with it than with them. He had a wife who had stopped waiting for him at the door years ago, not out of anger exactly, but out of a slow, practical resignation, the way you stop setting a place at the table for someone who is never quite coming. He had 2 sons who called him sir before they called him father, a habit that had started as a joke between them when they were small, and had somehow, without anyone deciding it, become simply true. He told himself this was temporary. He told himself that once he reached a certain number, he could never quite name the number. It kept sliding forward like a shadow at dusk, always just a little further than wherever he currently stood. He would slow down, he would sit with his sons, he would watch the light on the water the way other men did. He had a weakness, and it wasn't greed exactly, though it looked like greed from the outside. And greed was certainly the word his rivals used behind his back. His real weakness was believing that safety was a number, that somewhere ahead of him, if he just kept moving, there was a sum of silver large enough to finally let him rest, finally let him breathe out, finally let him sit on the riverbank without his mind already calculating what he was losing by sitting still. You may already recognize this weakness. Most of us carry some version of it, dressed up in different currencies: a salary, a savings goal, a house paid off, a promotion, a certain figure in a retirement account we've never actually seen, but somehow fear more than we fear illness. We tell ourselves the fear will end once we arrive. We rarely stop long enough to ask what arrive actually means, or whether it's a place that exists at all. One monsoon season, the rains came late, and then came all at once, and 3 of Devarim's barges went down in a single terrible night, their cargo lost to the current along with 2 men who worked for him, a detail he mentioned to almost no one and thought about more than he let himself admit. It was, by any honest measure, a small loss against his total wealth. He could have absorbed 10 times that and barely noticed the dent in his ledgers. But Devarim did not sleep for 11 nights. His hands shook when he held his pen. His wife found him at dawn one morning, sitting on the warehouse steps, still in his sleeping clothes. Not because he needed to be there, but because he could not think of anywhere else to sit with his fear. It was on the 12th day, walking along the riverbank trying to outpace his own mind, that he came upon an old monk sitting beneath a banyan tree near the ferry crossing. The monk owned, as far as anyone could tell, a robe, a bowl, and a mat woven from river reeds. He had been sitting in that same spot for so many years that the townspeople no longer noticed him. The way you stop noticing a familiar stone in a familiar wall. The way you stop noticing your own breathing until something forces you to. But what Devaram didn't know was that this particular morning, the monk had already been watching him for some time, had in fact watched him pass this same spot at this same hour for years without once turning his head toward the water. Devaram, half out of desperation and half out of the arrogance of a man used to buying answers, sat down across from the monk and said, "You have nothing. I have more silver than I can count. Tell me, old man, what do you know about money that I don't?" The monk didn't answer right away. He simply looked at the merchant the way you might look at a man clutching an empty cup and insisting he was thirsty for a different cup entirely. "I don't think this is about money," the monk finally said. "I think you're asking me something else. Remember this detail. It matters later." Devaram scoffed, but he didn't leave. He sat in the mud in his fine clothes and told the monk everything. The barges, the two men, the sleepless nights, the shaking hands, the strange terror that had followed him since the loss. A terror far larger than the loss itself could justify by any reasonable accounting. The monk listened without interrupting, which unsettled Devaram more than any question could have. He was used to people either flattering him or negotiating with him. No one simply listened, without waiting for their turn to speak, without an angle. But what he didn't know was that the monk was not really listening to the story at all. He was listening for the moment the story would repeat itself, the way it always does when someone is circling the true wound without landing on it. When Devaram finished, the monk asked a single question, quiet and unhurried. How much would be enough? And this is where everything changed. Devaram opened his mouth to answer with a real number. He had numbers ready. He always had numbers ready. They lived in him the way a heartbeat lives in a chest, automatic and constant. But what came out instead, before he could stop it, before his mind could dress it up in something more respectable, was this. Just a little more than I have now. 7 words. He heard himself say them and felt something drop in his chest. The way you feel the floor shift slightly under you in a small earthquake, not dangerous, but undeniable. The kind of moment that quietly rearranges everything that comes after it. The monk didn't smile, didn't gloat, didn't offer comfort. He simply let the silence hold the words up so Devaram could look at them properly. "You've had that answer for 20 years, the monk said. "Whatever you have, it will always be true. That's not an answer about money. That's a description of a wound that money was never going to close." Devaram sat very still. Around them, the river kept moving the way it always had, indifferent to fortunes made or lost on its banks, indifferent to barges and to grief and to old men under trees. A boatman called out somewhere downstream. The light was starting to go gold on the water, the way it did every evening, the way Devaram had walked past 1,000 times without once turning his head. That merchant is you. Every time you refresh your banking app, hoping the number will finally make you feel safe, and it doesn't. And some part of you already knew it wouldn't, and you refresh it again anyway 5 minutes later, as if this time might be different. This is the quiet, uncomfortable center of the story, and it comes down to one idea, not many. The fear you're trying to solve with money is very rarely a money problem. It's a sufficiency problem. It's the mind's old stubborn habit of placing safety just past the horizon, always one step beyond wherever you currently stand, so that arrival becomes structurally impossible, no matter how far or how fast you travel toward it. Devaram wasn't wrong to build his fortune. There is nothing shameful in ambition, nothing wrong with wanting to provide, to grow, to build something that outlasts you. He was wrong only to expect that fortune to do a job it was never built to do, the job of making him feel, in his own body, that he was already, finally, enough. You don't need 7 barges and a warehouse empire for this to describe you. You need only the habit of measuring your worth, your safety, your permission to rest against a number that moves whenever you get close to it. That is the entire disease, small and quiet and almost invisible from the inside. And like most diseases of the mind, it cannot be cured by feeding it more of what it's hungry for, because it isn't actually hungry for silver. It's hungry for a feeling that silver was never designed to produce, no matter how much of it you pour into the wound. The monk didn't send Devarim away empty-handed, and I won't either. Before Devarim stood to leave that evening, the old man offered him 7 small teachings, plain enough for a merchant to carry home in his pocket. And I'll offer them to you the same way, not as commandments, but as a kind of pocket-sized mirror. First, notice the moment your mind says, just a little more, because that phrase is never a plan, it's a symptom, and symptoms are worth naming out loud. Second, count what you already possess that cannot be taken by flood, fire, or bad fortune. Your hands, your breath, the people who still answer when you call, however imperfectly. Third, give something away on purpose, regularly, in an amount that costs you something to feel, because generosity is one of the few reliable cures for the illusion of scarcity, and it works precisely because it proves to your own nervous system that you can survive having less. Fourth, choose one evening this week where you do not check the number at all, and simply observe what your mind does in that silence, without judging what it does. Fifth, ask yourself honestly whether the goal you're chasing has a finish line, or whether, like Devarim's, it quietly moves every time you approach it. Sixth, spend without guilt on the few things that genuinely restore you, and without hesitation cut the spending that only numbs you for an hour and leaves you emptier than before. Seventh, and the monk said this one last slowly, as if he wanted it to be the only one Devarim remembered. Remember that the fear will not announce when it's satisfied. You have to decide that for it, on purpose, today, not later, not once you hit the number. None of these will make you richer. All of them, practiced honestly, will make you calmer. And calm, it turns out, is the thing you were actually trying to buy the whole time. The thing every extra coin was a clumsy, exhausting substitute for. Tonight, before you sleep, try 3 small things. Write down 3 things money cannot buy that you already own. Not gratitude cliches, but specific, true ones. A friend who tells you the truth even when it costs them something. A body that still carries you up the stairs without asking permission. A memory no one can repossess no matter how the market turns. Second, look honestly at one place where just a little more has been running your decisions quietly in the background, and name it out loud, even if no one hears you say it. Third, choose one small, concrete act of generosity you can do this week that costs you something real, not spare change tossed without thought, and do it without telling anyone, and notice what it does to the fear afterward. This isn't about becoming poor in spirit, or pretending money doesn't matter, or renouncing the world the way the old monk did. Devarim never became a monk. He kept his warehouses, kept his ledgers, kept working until the end of his days. This is about something smaller and more honest than renunciation. It's about refusing to let a number do the emotional work that only you can do for yourself. Picture Devarim, years later, an old man himself by then, sitting on the same riverbank at dusk, no ledger under his arm, watching the gold light move across the water exactly as it always had. Except now he was actually watching it, really watching it, the way a man watches something he finally understands he was given for free. He still owned his warehouses. He still counted his silver, because someone had to, because the town still depended on him. But he had stopped asking it to make him safe, because he had finally understood that safety was never going to arrive by barge, no matter how many made it safely to shore. I built an empire looking for an answer, he told his sons once, near the end of his life, sitting with them at last, not as sir, but as their father. And the answer had been sitting under a tree the whole time, waiting for me to stop moving long enough to hear it. And so, if there's one thing worth carrying with you tonight, let it be this. The number will never tell you that you're enough. Only you can decide that, and you can decide it right now, tonight, with whatever you currently hold in your hands. If this story gave you even a moment of that stillness, there are more waiting for you here. Next time, I'll tell you about a king who traded his crown for a single night's sleep, and what he discovered he had been missing all along, in plain sight, the entire time he wore it. Until then, may you find, in what you already have, more than enough.